Hello, I'm going to be reviewing a call from the line, the edition that went out on the 20th of September. And Jack called in to speak to Matt and Mindshift Skeptic. And his topic was that he wanted to talk about how atheist arguments against the existence of God based on the problem of evil he did not find compelling. The call lasted about 35 minutes, and I'm going to discuss some of that after the clip I'm going to play. I'm going to play it within the next 10-15 seconds, so stay tuned. But he eventually gets around to talking about why he believes in God. So I'm going to go to that clip. I'm going to comment on that and the whole call. So let's go with it.
Being able to deconvert that way, I think, but a big part, and I'll acknowledge a big part of the reason why I still believe is I can't get past the fact that there's absolutely an element of wishfulness or a desire for there to be a bigger purpose. So I can absolutely acknowledge that I'm biased in that way. But when I get down to trying to objectively line up the evidence, you know, the arguments from atheists against the argument or against the existence of a good God or of a God in general, I don't necessarily find them convincing. And I guess on some level, just the vast complexity of the universe, and I know complexity isn't proof of God, but just for me, it strikes me as weird that we're this amalgamation of atoms that are communicating through this device that would be magic 100, 200 years ago. And I don't necessarily attribute that to God, but I think it's fascinating that there's so many things we don't understand. And I guess I would be really disappointed if I learned that it's just oblivion and there's no inherent meaning to life. I would like to believe that, but I acknowledge that I'm biased.
I think I would be more disappointed to find out that there was some afterlife that we had no good reason to think existed or to be able to verify or to be able to understand the criteria or the soteriology that might potentially lead to that. It's like, when people look at, I had a cousin that lived for a few years but never really left a bassinet. And you take that child and the one that Brandon was talking about earlier that lives for 4 years and absolutely suffers in poverty and misery and malnutrition. And some other, take a baby that survives 3 seconds after delivery before stroking out in a grand suffering fashion and just dies immediately. What I hear from some believers who are trying to make sense of those 3 scenarios is something that I know provides comfort for them because it used to provide comfort for me. And now it absolutely fucking pisses me off, because what they'll say is, God afflicted that person for our benefit. There was some lesson that we needed to learn, and we needed to learn it so bad that God allowed this absolute waste of a life of someone who never, never really felt joy. You talk about a kid getting heartbroken after their first love. Yeah, that's bad, but there was joy before that. And there are all these people who say, oh, the life is so hard. The antinatalists who are like, oh, you brought a child into the world without their consent when life is just way more miserable than it is pleasurable. Well, I don't find life more miserable than pleasurable, despite having quite a lot of miserable things about it. But what I find most frustrating isn't that there's misery or pain or suffering, but when it's completely uncoupled from joy. And my life's had mountains of joy at different times. I was joyous multiple times today while having a toothache and a stomach ache. The notion that God needs to inflict and make a child suffer so that somebody else can come to some realization is barbaric and wholly unimaginative. What kind of God can't teach a properly functioning human mind a valuable lesson without torturing another one? What kind of God make on a bet allows the torment of Job? What was the purpose of that?
I always actually found that story to be really weird.
Okay, so I played a clip there of Jack's reasons for believing in God. His God, he claims not to be a Christian. And I played Matt's response. So I'm now going to be talking. There'll be no more clips. So if you don't want to hear me talk, bye. And if you want to hear me go over what my thoughts on the entire call, stay with me. I'll be speaking for maybe about 5 or 6 minutes. So yeah, so yeah, Jack did call in. It's his first call. We've got this new host. Let me see, what's his name? Mindshift Skeptic. I forget what his first name is, but I thought he did quite well. His responses were quite well considered and good points that he made. So I dare say we'll be seeing him again. Matt apparently picked him up in his feed. The algorithm put him out there, and he decided that, you know, he was good enough to go on, and he did do well. So, but let me just go on with the call. Yeah, so Jack called in, and his point really was that he said that he's abandoned Christianity. He said, however, he still does believe in some God. And he said that in terms of atheist arguments against God based on the problem of evil, he did not find those arguments compelling. And then he explained why. It was a very long call. It was something like 35 minutes. There's no way that I'm going to review the entire call, because they spent a lot of time dwelling on this problem of evil, what kind of arguments atheists have made against the existence of God based on the problem of evil, etc., etc. Matt quite rightly said, and I agree with him, for me, the problem of evil is not the reason I don't believe in any God, because I recognize that it could be part of, however perverse, it could be part of a valid theology. And I mean valid in the sense that you could invent a theology that is consistent and that makes sense. There may well be a God out there who has created a world or allowed a world to exist in which infinite suffering, or not infinite, but extreme suffering is possible for whatever reason. It may well be that, for example, as I believe Mother Teresa argued, that the greater your suffering is, the greater your reward in heaven will be. There may be some kind of compensation scheme so that if you suffer excruciating pain, the more you suffer on this earth, it's like a virtue, the greater will be your reward in heaven. In terms of, for example, a life of infinite bliss, the more suffering you experience, the greater your bliss will be. There could always be a God like that. Now, of course, I don't tend to appeal to the problem of evil, because my reason for not believing in the existence of God is because it hasn't met its burden of proof as a claim. There is insufficient evidence. I feel that I never have to go to the problem of evil. And also, for the reason I just described, you can always, and as indeed Christians do, why did Mr. and Mrs. Smith, why did their child die of cancer at 4 years old? Well, they were two people of faith, and God wanted to test their faith. And the best way to do that was to kill their child at 4 years old, cancer, and to test their faith. And well done, bravo, they kept their faith. And one of them wavered a little, but came out stronger at the end of it, and therefore, but don't worry, because the child that died is going to be compensated in heaven, etc. So there's no, in my view, there's no ultimate way of defeating theism through the problem of evil. There's always going to be some loophole, some kind of theology that you can invent to get around it. So I never go to that. I always go to, well, there's insufficient evidence, which is my reason for not believing in the existence of God, not the problem of evil. Of course, I happen to believe that the world that we have and the things that go on is fairly consistent, I think, in all likelihood, with a universe or an existence which has no God. But I don't appeal to the problem of evil. Yeah, So what I found really strange, what I did find strange, is that Jack was phoning in, says he's not a Christian, he's turned his back on Christianity. Then he mentioned Alan Watts. He said he's still a theist. And then he started saying, well, there would have to be suffering, otherwise there could never be good. Now, this is the kind of argument that I hear from Christians. And I find it really strange that somebody who believes in God, the arguments, the sort of woo spirituality of somebody like Alan Watts, if that's what appeals to him. He didn't really explain what kind of God he believes in. If I got a criticism of this call, it'd be a few criticisms. First of all, it went on way too long. 35 minutes was way too long to spend on this call. They didn't ask him what kind of God he believes in. And I think that if you've got a theist coming on, bizarrely wanting to talk about effectively a Christian issue, which is the problem of evil. And in fact, as Mindshift Skeptic rightly said, why are you going to the problem of evil when you've left behind the Christian God? Because really, the problem of evil, okay, Islam, I suppose you could, but I mean, really, it's a Christian thing, or benevolent God, etc. Yeah, I know that Islam is as well, I suppose, but when we're talking about the problem of evil, we tend to be arguing with Christians. So if he's moved on from Christianity, why is he hung up on this problem of evil and he's not convinced by atheist arguments? I don't really get it. And this brings me to the call that we heard the other night, the flat earther who came on, and really he was using the line as a means to get his agenda out, which is flat earth. And he was pretending to argue for the existence of God via flat earth model, called himself a globe skeptic, heliocentric skeptic, etc. And he really wanted to get that agenda out there. He wasn't, I think he was dishonest. He didn't really come on to argue for the existence of God at all. And I wonder whether, and I really strongly suspect, that Jack is a Christian and he's a liar. And okay, it may well be that he may well have thrown Alan Watts in there just to give his claim that he's moved on from Christianity. I can't say this for certain. It's just a suspicion that I've got, because I find it a bit weird that he would come on and spend all this time talking about atheist arguments against the existence of God based on the problem of evil. It turns out he's a woo merchant. He follows Alan Watts. He wasn't challenged about what kind of God he believes in. And when eventually he came around to saying, well, let's just go through some of the reasons he gave there in that clip for continuing to believe in the existence of God. Okay, well, you've got to give him one piece of credit. He admits in wishful thinking. He says, he admits that it's a wish of his that there is some grand purpose. But, I mean, the God of Alan Watts, I'm not really too sure whether in Alan Watts' philosophy or religion there is a God. Isn't he into Zen? And Zen, there's no God in Zen, is there? Oh no, I mean I know there's no God in Zen from the Zen worldview. So I find it strange that Alan Watts appeals to him, and yet he's talking about the belief in God for him is appealing because it fulfills his wish that there's some grand purpose, argument from purpose. So yeah, then he goes on to say that he's shifting the burden of proof. He then goes on to say that he hasn't been convinced by any atheist arguments against the existence of God. He's shifting the burden of proof. Well, you can't disprove my God, therefore I'm going to go ahead and believe in it. So they didn't really challenge him on that. I really wonder why. Matt was being incredibly polite and reasonable. Normally, Matt wouldn't have given more than 5 minutes on this discussion of the problem of evil. He would have said, right, which God do you believe in? You're not a Christian. Why are you arguing, for the problem of evil? And they said, oh, Alan Watts, yeah, I still believe in God, etc., wishful thinking. And then they could have nailed them down. Well, which God? Describe your God. Define it. That's what I wanted to see, and it didn't happen. Yeah, so he's shifting the burden of proof, saying, well, atheists can't disprove my God. Therefore, I might as well go ahead and believe in it. And then he goes on to complexity, while admitting that complexity is a fallacious reason for believing in the existence of God. He says, oh, somehow I just can't get my mind around this whole, all the complexity around us. And so he said that. And he said, oh, it's like he's sort of befuddled, and Richard Dawkins describes it as the argument from incredulity. He just can't get his head around the fact that there's this weird amalgamation of molecules, etc., and somehow we all exist, etc. He just can't get his head around that. There must be a God. And he says, oh, I'm not attributing all this to a God. Well, no, you are. That's exactly what you're doing. You're describing all your reasons. You're describing all your reasons for believing in God, and one of those is this weird amalgamation of molecules. And he's not attributing this weird amalgamation of molecules to the existence of God. Then why is he bringing it up at all? No, he is attributing this weird amalgamation of molecules to the existence of God. That's exactly what he's doing. And I was disappointed that they didn't call him out on that. And then he went on to say that he would be very disappointed if there's no purpose and if there's no afterlife. Well, I mean, I'm disappointed that I haven't got $1 billion. Well, not $1 billion. I'm disappointed that I haven't even got, a few £1,000s in my bank account. But I know what the truth is. I mean, the evidence. I mean, if somebody told me I had $1 billion, it would be nice to believe I got £1 billion in my bank account. But unfortunately, there's no evidence for that. So, him being disappointed, or he wouldn't like to be disappointed in the event that there's no afterlife, it's no kind of argument for the existence of God. It's just not. It's no argument at all. The truth is independent of what disappoints you or pleases you. And I was really disappointed. I don't know what you guys think. Sorry, I'm just reading from my notes here. I made a few notes. I was really disappointed that they didn't pursue that, because after all, okay, fair dues. The title of the show is "Do You Wish There Was a God?" But I mean, having said that, yes, he wishes there was a God. He's already said he believes that there is a God, and I just wish that they would have spent the time nailing that down and exposing all his fallacies. He kind of admitted to it, said, oh yeah, I know it's a fallacy. Well, I mean, if he knows that it's all fallacies, why is he appealing to them? And they didn't really say that. Matt then went on after what he said about why he believes in God. Matt didn't address that, bizarrely. He went straight on to talking about the problem of evil and why, if a baby dies 3 seconds after birth, it would be a kind of perverse thing that the baby died in order that other people could learn a lesson. Yeah, I mean, I agree with him about that, but then he's then really just coming back to what they kind of started off with, with the problem of evil. So I wasn't really satisfied with the way that Matt dealt with that, because they'd already hammered that out already. And I just wish that in the last 10 minutes of the call, they could have absolutely demolished his, his arguments or his reasons for the existence of God. Because they left that hanging and they said, okay, call back another time. But they spent 35 minutes. They spent 35 minutes on the call, and there's no reason for him to call back again. They should have nailed him. They should have demolished his reasons for believing, and then sent him on his merry way, on his deluded way. So, well, that's about it. I do have a suspicion. I can't prove it, but I suspect that he's not telling us the whole story, because I think it's bizarre that he came on the way that he did and then said he's not even a Christian, and yet he's coming on behaving like a Christian, saying I'm not convinced by atheist arguments against the existence of my Christian God because of the problem of evil. He doesn't believe in a Christian God. Why is he coming on with that? It doesn't make any sense. Okay, that's all from me, and hope you enjoyed. If you're still with me, thank you very much. Only about 1 in 5 of you get to the end of my call. Hope you're enjoying my memes. I'm more or less writing the text for them, and I'm taking images. Hope you're enjoying them. 1 or 2 of you are being a bit nitpicky, like on the one with the Muslim suicide bomber. where the caption is, you'll never see an atheist doing that. It obviously means that we don't see atheist suicide bombers dying in the name of atheism. We haven't done. I don't believe that we ever have, and I probably don't believe that we ever will. Of course, one can never say never, but with memes, there's no need to be too kind of literal with them. All right, that's all from me for now. I'll be back again soon. Bye.